Greetings, cousins. How y'all doing?
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I've actually started doing a tour. I'm a docent, and I started doing a tour and realized that I had not turned on my microphone, so no one could hear me. But anyway, so Naomi, thank you for coming.
Audrey, you know I'm a big Audrey fan, and I want to say, as far as independent media goes, this is not a cut and paste kind of girl. She's going to ask you 20 questions to Sunday, and her colleague, Carrie Lighterson, who, oh my God, if you all don't know her, these are the goddesses of the word, and we're just really grateful at Blacks in Green to be cared about in their radar.
Thank you. So I'm just going to start with a brief intro and a question. Basically, you have this, I almost call it a mantra, that you characterize the sustainable square mile as a means to manifest communities where African Americans can walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play, where they own the businesses, own the land, and live the conservation lifestyle.
It is my mantra, literally.
So tell me how Blacks in Green developed and continues to develop the Sustainable Square Mile in West Woodlawn, some of the different programs and the work that you're doing.
Well, I want to give first cred to the ancestors, because when many people have heard me introduce myself, they've heard me say I am the proud granddaughter of Mississippi sharecroppers who, like millions of others, voted with their feet and moved up south for freedom and economic opportunity. And I wear that as a badge of honor. It's central to the work we do, which is anchored in self-love. And for those of you who are sensitive but may not be fully aware, African Americans are routinely taught to hate ourselves. And so the active, affirmative practices of self-love, self-help, self-reliance, live inside of the traditions of our great migration ancestors. So that means, like, back in the day, everything they ate, they grew, everything they wore, they made, except the hats and shoes, I'm told. And they thought they were poor, but they discovered they were rich. And so what kind of world are we aiming for? Are we aspiring to, where we have that kind of self-sustaining capacity, where we are able to be in community, as you know, we've already mentioned that. We say at Blacks in Green and in the spiritual discipline of our ancestors that how a person comes to know themselves is through community. And so my mom moved to New York City, became a master gardener, raised us in a walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play village, where African Americans own the businesses, own the land, and live the conservation lifestyle. So I just ripped it off, you know. I saw, to my horror, I might add, that kind of community going extinct in the Black community across my lifetime, and just couldn't live with it. And that agony was the source of the creation of Blacks in Green back in 2007, where I had begun researching, like, okay, who's doing this? Who's solving for this? Who's creating the whole system solution for the whole system problem common to Black communities everywhere? And so, not finding it, I set about the process of creating it. And I had been wandering, you know, like 40 years, like the Jews in the desert. It's like, I'm wandering, I'm looking for my place, my people, my holy grail. And so I set my I'm mixing my metaphors here, but Booker T. Washington said, "Put your bucket down where you stand," and Adam Clayton Powell said, "Start with what's in your hand." So with no funding, no staff, no headquarters, Blacks in Green began, and by the grace of God, we're here today looking at how we expand our model nationally. Does that answer your question?
It does. And it actually leads to another question. You always know that, right?
I saw that coming.
So, no, and you mentioned something important. You talked about self-sufficiency and self-reliance. And you've really emphasized that importance for organizations like Blacks in Green and other Black, Indigenous, and Latina-based organizations. Rather than serving as a subcontractor in your programs and in your projects, serving as the lead rather than a subcontractor. Talk more about that and tell me, and explain why that's important and how that works.
Well, I want to give a little preamble to that, which is a lot of people know, but everybody doesn't know. I worked the first 12 years for free. A lot of folks don't buy their first pencil until they have that grant. This was not that. And so, being in the community, organizing door-to-door, free events, flyering, pamphlets, proselytize. If you stood still long enough, you got the Blacks in Green rap, okay? And as I say, by the grace of God, in 2019, we got our first grant. Actually, it wasn't a grant. It was a fee-for-service contract with none other than ComEd. And we survived it. And no offense, Gil. But what it did was it gave us our first little staff of 6 people, our first little headquarters, and a way to anchor ourselves in place, because the community-based organization is all about that base. It's about, and in the environmental justice framework, it's about being of a place, working with a place, inside of the virtues and values of that place. And so it's a we thing. It's generative from that core. And so the idea that we opened up our little it's not so little actually, our headquarters, we leased it in 2019, we bought it in 2022, and we now own 11 properties in West Woodlawn, our walkable village. The idea is, how are we investing? My alder, Jeanette Taylor, is a vigilant vanguard against wealth disparity, displacement, and the kind of tokenism that many developers, become accustomed to using as their toolkit or their mindset, their way of being. And so it's a real honor to be part of a community where we're just so the opposite of that. Our self-interest is the self-interest of the neighbors. We're out to increase the rate that neighbor-owned businesses are created and sustained. We're out to build the capacity of neighbors to own, develop, and manage the property in their community. And also to remember and reignite that conservation lifestyle. And what's that? That's households and homesteads that produce their own energy, grow their own food, clean their own water, recycle their own waste. So that whole piece about self-sustainability is knitted. And it's a slow process, because as big as we are, we're really tiny. And to really transform the damage of decades, you really need billions, not even millions. And so we are proudly just burrowing away one step at a time. And the idea is we have two goals. Two goals. We're going to increase household income via the new green economy. And we're going to increase community resilience against the harms of climate crisis. And so, really, we don't know any other organization doing that. And we're doing it because it looked like the high leverage chunks that could make the most difference for the neighbors, you know, we know and love and are committed to. So in the context of West Woodlawn, which is Chicago's first black middle class neighborhood, a great migration comer community. We own the Emmett and Mamie Till Mobley House. I don't know if you guys know that. We've been redeveloping it as a museum for the last 5 years. Slow going, but you know, everything starts with a commitment, right? If you're committed, you will get there if you just, hey, AJ, if you just don't stop, okay? So the idea is we own our headquarters, which has a community meeting space, our offices. It has an Airbnb. It has a tenant space. In other words, we're looking at how to create a village, how to be that green hub in the hood, how to be that place where you can come and get your green on. You know that there's someone that you can go to. And we also just recently bought a church, the old Lincoln Memorial UCC church. And why? Well, it's a half a block down the alley from the Till House. The Till House is a 2-flat, y'all. You can't do a whole heck of a lot in a 2-flat. You need a little bit more elbow room. So we see that as not only an adjunct space for the Till opportunities, and we're working very closely and under advisement of the Till family, but we also see it as a neighborhood energy and resilience center. We will be using it for the training hub of our Set for Life program. Why do I say it like that? Because it's so exciting to know that there's a career that you can have now, that you can retire from, like your grandfathers used to retire from something. This is energy auditing. This is, can I get an amen? Okay, this is energy auditing. This is the opportunity, and look, it gets even better than that, because in the program that we're launching this fall, we're starting with, I believe, 20 trainees. We're recruiting them from the neighborhood. Now, eventually we'd like to continue to expand, but the point is, walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play. Every resource that we get in our hot little hands, we try to reinvest that in our walkable village. We don't have the peanut butter to spread on the whole piece of bread of Chicago, not yet, let alone across the country, which is where we'd like to see all the sustainable square miles, that concept, that proof of concept that we're working on, be spread. So the idea that we have a church space, just picture, it's a beautiful, beautiful space, beautiful sanctuary, seats 500, for concerts, for church services, for youth theater, and for energy training. I mean, that's, you see the integration of the whole system approach to the work that wants to be done. And the idea that that church, the Till House, and the Green Living Room, which is the name of our headquarters, is within a stone's throw of the coming Obama Presidential Center. The fact that we're just a stone's throw from the DuSable Museum of African American History, we're looking at how we're gonna build, how we're gonna build economies, not jobs, economies. That means your supply chain, that means your customers, that means your product or service. How can we build economies in energy, horticulture, housing, tourism, and waste? Energy, horticulture, housing, tourism, and waste. So to be able to design an infrastructure that connects all of those things, connects them with a Great Migration walking trail. That's part of the reason we're acquiring the properties. And why I mentioned my alder is because she wants to make sure that, you know, there's a giving more than there's a taking. And we're the kind of developer that we think actually is quite rare, because to invest, some of those properties were bought at market rate. Some of them were bought from the government. We're still working on tax exemption. It costs. It's real. But you give to what you're committed to. And so it's a beautiful feeling to be in a place. I actually live in West Woodlawn. By the hair of my chinny chin chin, I could afford to buy a house there. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm looking forward to aging in place. I'm looking forward to how neighbors can continue to percolate and work together and profit from the new green economy and increase their household income and their resilience. That's part of an answer.
It is, and of course it leads to another question.
Amen.
And by the way, if you have not been to the Green Living Room, if you're here in Chicago, next chance you get, take it. It's an amazing space.
And if your company wants to rent the space, earned income, if you want to have a little getaway or get away from, we have a beautiful Airbnb. It is really luxurious. It's got a cook's kitchen. It's quiet. No one will know you're there unless you want them to. And it's the kind of space that really is there to nourish the soul. So we have, in the Green Living Room, we have a conference space. We have a small boutique where we sell items we make. That's part of our 8 principles of Green Village building, is make something and sell it, okay? We make our own soaps, bath salts, and we have a little art boutique there. I'm saying these things because I'm trying to paint a little picture for you of a place. And when people come in to a one, don't they, Sandra? They say, ooh, this just feels good here. And we work to create that energy.
So, as I said, more questions. And you raised, actually it's a 2-part question. One is you talk about the costs, and one part of my question is how you leverage your resources, internal and externally obtained. The second part is, and I'm actually going to read this. I usually don't, but I just wanted to read this. Basically, the sustainability movement has largely been defined by quote-unquote hard infrastructure, solar arrays, the LEED building standard, living building, and electrification. So you mentioned what I'm calling a broader definition of resiliency. So talk more about how sustainability and resilience work with Blacks in Green. And again, you actually led into some of that, but more of that holistic approach as opposed, I mean, it's not either or. It's not, oh, we're not going to electrify. That's not it. But it's a both and. So talk more about that.
Well, we have what we call the West Woodlawn Botanic Garden Village Farm and Arboretum, which has been designed and defined to ask and answer 4 questions. How many households can we feed? How many neighbors can we train and engage? How many jobs and businesses can we create? And how many gallons of stormwater can we divert? Now, in the process of creating this oasis, as I like to imagine it, we've planted over 400 trees over the past. God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll be able to get another 49 trees down our commercial corridor this spring. We have a desire to take those parcels that we own and others that we're attempting to acquire to develop a collective of land stewards. In other words, back in the day, in that same neighborhood, all grannies had a backyard garden. Can you feel me? So it's like, who has one anymore? Okay. And the idea is that there's a lifestyle that you're creating, and there's a resilience that you're creating when people begin to be of a mindset. Remember COVID? Okay, remember how the grocery shelves look at COVID, all right? And, you know, you get antsy, you get aggravated, you have all kinds of anxiety associated with how am I gonna make it, unless you're thinking collectively as a community that you don't do this alone. You do this as community. And we've gotten away from that in our communities. We don't quite know our neighbors the way we used to, but it's a built practice. It involves just doing fun stuff together sometimes. Y'all heard of bowling alone?
Yes.
Bowling alone? Come on, join a club, do something. We have a lot of different suggestions and a lot of different ways that we're trying to support our neighbors in knowing each other, not the least of which is Vincent Davis, certified emergency manager, who's written the book Empowered and Prepared, a guide to Black resilience for Black communities during the climate crisis. I know I mangled that a little bit, but he's been a friend of ours for 10 years, and we've been trying to get that, just sort of that seed of thought in the back of the mind of the people who actually, let's face it, are hit first and worst, resource least and last. How can we make it a part of the consciousness, not like, oh, woe is me, but like, oh, woe is me. Like, we're gonna get it together, we're gonna get it on, because the one thing Vincent Davis always says is, when the you-know-what hits the fan, don't run to your closet for your canned meat and your bottled water, because those who don't have it gonna be right behind you, okay? You can't do this as an individual. You have to thrive the climate crisis in a collective. So years and years ago, when I first began researching solutions back in the year 2000. And between the years 2000 and 2007 is when I came up with the 8 principles. And one of the resources that was very fascinating to me was the transition town model. Who heard of that? Anyone heard of the transition town? Okay, and they had a thing called, I mean, it's not rocket science, but when you organize, right, then it's rocket science, okay? They had a thing called the skills inventory. Who can fix a motor? Who can sew? Who can birth a baby? Who can play a violin? You know, it's like, you wanna know who are the assets, not what are, but who are the assets in your neighborhood. And so in the genre or in the realm of emergency management, there's a lot of great fun you can have along the way in terms of getting prepared. So we have a geothermal, we got a $9.9 million grant from the US Department of Energy to install geothermal in our walkable village. And we have a 5-block pilot. Yay. We're not just a pretty face. We're in year 2 now, and what we're doing is the block where the Till House is and our church, which we've renamed the Shrine of the Great Migration, will be running from 63rd to 65th in the alley between St. Lawrence and Champlain, and in a way that allows neighbors the option of connecting in. So it's affordable, it's flexible, you'll save at least 20% on your heat and light, and get free air conditioning along the way. You can't beat that deal. We just put in a grant for broadband, so that when we're going down 300 feet, 300 to 400 feet for the geothermal technology, lay that conduit, the the broadband conduit down there, pair it with it, so that low cost. You heard of the digital divide, right? It's like your old uncle. He's always around, you know. You can't get rid of him. It's like ridiculous already. If there's a divide, are you solving for it? If you're not solving for it, you're just talking about it, right? So we're looking to be in the solution business around, because look, you can't even run your refrigerator anymore without the internet. Come on. I put on some music the other day, my refrigerator started playing. I'm like, wait, back up. The idea that our children are getting left behind because they can't afford the internet at home, they can't afford the computers, and life ain't analog no more. And how are we moving through school, and how are we graduating, and how are we integrating into the workforce? And the digital divide will keep dividing until programs like this, and we're not the be-all and end-all, except in our minds, but not for real. Anybody can do it. And the idea that our geothermal broadband installation is launching this year 2. We're a little bit delayed, but hope to get into the ground before the winter hits. And then the other thing is that we have a 9-megawatt solar development, and that's industrial scale, people. It's a 9-megawatt solar project that is a $28 million program. Now, we started back in 2019, right, with our ComEd fee-for-service contract. And we're a little bit spindly because, you know, we're growing. We got to get that infrastructure in, and we're just a small entity. We're really small. But the people, the staff, the supporters, the board are just really terrific. And the idea that whole thing, like we have the green walking trails, we're going to be solving for storm, you know, we have flooding basements in Chicago, do we not? Yeah. How does the green infrastructure that we're installing abate or mitigate that problem? We have a director of green infrastructure on our staff who is specifically designing that walking trail that we're acquiring property for. We're going to put some tiny houses on it, but it's mostly for the lush, life-giving green that you want where you live. You know the study about the hospitals, and if you can see out and there's green there, you heal faster. So I would say in conclusion that the holism of our work is the secret sauce. There is no blacks and green. There is no sustainable square mile. There are no 8 principles of green village building, lest we are weaving a holistic interconnection of the solutions. Because really the blacks and green started back in 2000 with identifying the whole system problem, which was blatantly obvious if you thought about it, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it. But the miracle that came to me last year is, because I'm hardwired to be a workaholic, and you know, the world is jacked up, and who's gonna be happy about that? So I'm just like a little bit of a Debbie Downer is how I grew up, because I'm looking at the glass half empty and figuring out how I can fill it. But last year I had a miracle, and I discovered the superpower of happiness. And it's a long story, we're not gonna tell it here, but what we are going to recognize is that all great things are possible, that we can see each other with the eyes of love, no matter what, and that when we hitch our hearts to the plow and move in the direction of our aspiration, we will get there. And we'll get there with the people that we love and the goodness that we attract, because our happiness makes us so magnetic. So I was happy to discover And I'm working on it because my hard wiring does kick in. I get 2 hours of sleep many nights, 4 hours when I'm luxuriating. But I don't believe that kind of grind is necessary when you have happiness in your heart and surround yourself with people with the same thing. And that's who I hope we have in the audience, because we'd love to be partnering with you.
One last question. And just for reference, she talks about the 8 principles. I will list them: wealth, energy, products, homestead, culture, organization, education, and economy. But that's not the question. The question is, and you led into it very nicely, actually, what can people take away from this? And how can the idea or the concept or even the manifestation of the sustainable square mile be reproduced elsewhere outside of West Woodlawn?
Well, we like to think about the the 8 principles of Green Village. We say if you implement the 8 principles of Green Village building across in a walkable village, not the whole city of Chicago, just your little walkable village, over an arc of time. We're doing a 3-year experiment. We're recruiting 100 households this year, and we're going to coach and mentor them for free in all of the programs that we produce that they're interested in. We're going to get them in a little household curriculum, and we're going to mark their income in year 1. We're going to mark their income in year 2, and we're going to mark their income in year 3. That's our proof of concept. So what we're saying is that if you are interested in exploring a different way of living in community, come be with us. So wait a minute, I forgot your question.
Basically, you are answering it, but basically, how can you? And
oh yeah, so we are doing a couple of things. I like to think about, and you and I talked about this a few weeks ago, the 8 principles of Green Village building. If you implement them in that way, you're going to create a sustainable square mile. And we'd like to see sustainable square miles all across Chicago, all across the country. And that's as far as my vision can take me, because that's big enough. But the idea is that it's like this intersection of Kwanzaa and lead. Kwanzaa and lead. There wasn't no Kwanzaa. Somebody said there's a Kwanzaa and it had these principles and these days and these practices. Now there's a Kwanzaa, right? And we love it, right? And lead. Well, we are institutionalizing our process, our system. And we are partnered with, not naming the university right now, but in producing a certification program that will allow us to produce a cohort after cohort of practitioners. Because it's not like you can say, oh, okay, I want to be one of them sustainable square miles. But I really like the energy part, and the household part really turns me on, but I'm not so much into that culture piece. No, it's a whole system solution. And it is designed, it's like saying if you're an engineer, well, I like the nuts, but I don't like the bolts. You see, my basic understanding of engineering is so crude. But you get what I'm saying. It's like a whole system solution. And so we are also launching a community of practice this fall, and you and yours can be in it. Here's what I want people to take away, because now I remember your question, is I'm here to be your partner, and I welcome your inquiries. I'm eager to hear your stories. What are you doing? Where are you coming from? What's your dream? Because as someone who's brought up in an Afrocentric home, as if you couldn't tell, right? I was raised to love my people and know my history, and also understand through one of my favorite stories, which is the Underground Railroad. that you can get there when you're working with allies across the bounds of race and class, you're probably not going to get there without them. You see what I'm saying? We're here on the pale blue dot. You know what I'm talking about? The pale blue dot. And if you have a chance, go to the official version of that little 3.5-minute video on the internet. It's magnificent. It's a magnificent reminder of our interconnectedness as human beings. Now, I know a bunch of people with billions in their pockets are trying to go to the next planet to screw up, but, did I say that? I'm sorry. But for now, we're all we've got, and this is all we've got. God gave it to us fair and square. It's ours to steward.
Thank you, Naomi Davis.
Thank you.
What's that? You want to do some Q&A?
Real quick.
Okay, does anyone have a question? I know we said we wouldn't, but we will. Okay, over here. Sorry, I'll run with the mic.
Thank you so much. What have you seen as both the opportunities and challenges working with city and state government and policies in implementing your vision at Woodlawn?
Well, they can make you or break you. I mean, I've had friendly administrations and hostile administrations, and I was not able to surmount the challenges presented by hostile administrations. At that, for the scaling up. Now, kind of the little lie embedded in that is that in my spiritual discipline, no one can grant or deny you anything. You know, so you got to be careful about how you think about the person on the other side of the table. And what is your agency and what is your commitment? Because if you're really looking for what's missing, you'll find it. But if you're really looking for who your people are, who your allies are, where your path is, you can get there no matter what. So, but some people can make it a lot easier for you. And I'm blessed with the support of the Chicago Department of Environment. And the state of Illinois, Illinois Finance Authority has been just a real straight shooter with us. Our solar project ranked first, second, and fourth in the competition for renewable energy credits. So it's not like they did somebody a favor, if you know what I mean. We earned it. And so the idea is that, you know, I worked for over 12 years to get CEJA passed, and I know there's some other people in this room. CEJA people? CEJA people? Where's John? Okay. Y'all worked John, okay. Some people worked real hard to get that legislation passed, and then to get it regulated, and then to get it into practice in the market, okay? And now to get it the funding rolling out, and then to get the actual training, the actual jobs. Because the great thing I forgot to mention about Set for Life is that we're training people from day one. We're paying them $50,000 on an annualized basis. This ain't no $12 an hour, you know, hit it if you can sort of program. 12 weeks, you get your certification, Big will hire you. It's guaranteed employment. Why? Walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play. We're gonna audit every home in West Woodlawn. Why? Because we're in fuel switching. We're in decarbonization. So the idea that you know, the state has been glorious as an outcropping of CEJA, and also the idea that there are these public-private partnerships. Some of us have grown up for years and years hearing about public-private partnerships, but half of our money came from the state, half of ours came from the capital markets, y'all. Can I get an amen? because we're doing business. Yeah, we're do-gooders. And, you know, we care about equity, and we care about justice, and we care about how we treat each other, how we talk about each other, how we share the assets of the planet, and we care about the quality of life that is defined in the realm of climate and climate crisis. We're at what? Are we at 420 parts per million yet? Yeah, look at your watch, though, because we'll be there in a New York nanosecond. So the idea that we have all kinds of friends, remember the Underground Railroad, we can get there together, and I hope that answers your question.